Story time with Mr. Beat.
Hello, my name is Mr. Beat. This is the story of the Lawrence Massacre, also known as Quantrill's Raid. Once upon a time, there was a city called Lawrence, Kansas. Today, it's a peaceful place, but in the 1850s and 1860s, not so much. One reason why was because of this guy, William Quantrill. William Quantrill was a drifter who lived in many areas of the country, often as a school teacher. However, for most of his adult life, he lived in Missouri, near the Kansas border. During the 1850s, a crazy time there often called Bleeding Kansas. It was called Bleeding Kansas because this was an area where a series of violent attacks took place thanks to the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Basically, anti-slavery folks and pro-slavery folks were trying to make Kansas either a free state or slave state by moving to Kansas and often killing the opposing side in order to do so. Quantrill found himself caught up in the middle of all of this as a border ruffian, also known as a pro-slavery Missourian, who helped protect Missouri farmers from the Jayhawkers, also known as anti-slavery Kansans. He even lived in Lawrence for a short time, where he captured runaway slaves and returned them to their masters in exchange for reward money. Lawrence, of course, was the free state capital of Kansas, which made it a big target for pro-slavery border ruffians. Lawrence had been attacked twice during the 1850s, but both attacks were not as bad as the third attack, which Quantrill himself would later cause. You see, Quantrill had grown to hate the Jayhawkers, particularly Free State Senator James Lane, for his part attacking and destroying the pro-slavery town of Osceola, Missouri on September 23, 1861. Osceola was completely burned and plundered. Everything valuable was stolen from, and 9 local citizens were executed. Quantrill wanted revenge. In 1863, now at the rank of captain for the Confederate Army, he carefully planned another attack on Lawrence. This was in the middle of the American Civil War, and Quantrill and his men could attack under the pretense of the war. In other words, they could get away with it. Quantrill gathered his own rogue group of men to help him. Many of his men had no idea what they were really getting into or were about to do. On the early morning of August 21st, 1863, Quantrill and as many as 450 guerrillas came down from Mount Oread and attacked Lawrence, completely surprising the town. Over 4 hours, the raiders pillaged and set fire to the town and killed most of the male population of Lawrence. About a quarter of all buildings were burned to the ground. They robbed the banks and stores and even forced women to make them meals at gunpoint. As many as 200 men and boys were killed. Quantrill had stressed to leave all females alive. By 9 a.m., the raiders were already on their way out of town. The main target of the raid, Senator James Lane, who was the one responsible for the Osceola raid 2 years earlier, actually survived. Still in his pajamas, he had managed to escape by hiding in a cornfield. Many of the buildings that had been destroyed in the sacking of Lawrence 7 years earlier, such as the Eldridge House Hotel, were destroyed again. Don't worry, the Eldridge was rebuilt and still stands today. Quantrill had escaped, but would die 2 years later from a battle wound. A day after the attack, the surviving citizens lynched a member of Quantrill's raiders that was still left in town. But the craziest thing that happened as a result of the Lawrence Massacre was Union General Thomas Ewing's order that all Missourians living near the border of Kansas had to evacuate their homes, even if they could prove they were loyal to the Union. James Lane wanted to retaliate by rallying Free State forces to attack the pro-slavery town of Westport, Missouri, but Ewing stopped his advance. Instead, he ordered all of the area that was evacuated in Missouri near the Kansas border completely destroyed and burned. Animals and farm property were stolen or became a devastated no man's land, with only chimneys and burnt rubble left, causing people to call the area the Burnt District. After this, things finally began to quiet down between Free Staters and border ruffians. However, the legacy survives, and the current border war between the University of Kansas and University of Missouri can be traced back to the wild 1850s in the days of Bleeding Kansas and the Lawrence Massacre. The end.